Hello, this is John Comey. Welcome to the 2017 WSAR Mayoral Debate. We're pleased today to have Mayor Jazel Pereira in the House, as well as City Council Vice President Linda Pereira. Thank you very much for being here. This debate is going to unfold over 2 hours. We've got some questions that have both come in from the community and from our newsroom here at WSAR. My name's John Comey. I'm going to be your moderator today. I'm just going to go through some of the ground rules for this event. We've already had our coin flip to determine who's going to go first. It was Councillor Pereira. Each candidate's going to have a 2-minute opening statement, and then they are going to take questions. They're going to be posed by Rick Oliveira here and also by our Alan Zarek. You're going to get a question. The candidates are going to each answer alternately with a 2-minute format, and then the other candidate has 90 seconds to respond. Correct?
I thought it was a minute and 30, but go ahead.
Minute and 30 to respond. And then there will be a rebuttal of 30 seconds.
Correct.
Okay. And then there could be further discussion on that. That'll be at the moderator's discretion. And at the end of the debate, Mayor Pereira will answer first. We'll close first, and then Councillor Pereira will have 2 minutes for closing statements. All right. And we are going to, if we're ready to go to the questions.
No, we're going to start with the opening statement.
Apologies. We're going to go. This is why we have Rick here. He's the wind beneath my wings. So we're going to get going here. All right. We're going to start with opening statements.
And the first one will be Linda Pereira.
Correct.
Right. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for putting this debate together, and I'm very happy to be here. This decision is a simple choice of which of the two people you see before you today that you're hearing is suited to lead the city forward. Leadership needs to reflect the values our citizens hold dear: honesty, hard work, compassion, and judgment. These are fundamental values that hard-working forever families instill in their children. So shouldn't they be the values that we expect in our leaders? So I'm here to answer questions, and let me begin by asking each of you a question. Of the two people on this stage, one of who you've known publicly for 4 decades and one who you've known publicly for barely 4 years, which one of us in our public and private careers have exhibited the values of honesty, hard work, compassion, and judgment? In addition to values, this election is about vision. Who has the vision that best reflects the vision you have for Fall River and your children's future? My vision, I have laid out very specific plans and address 3 major areas: public safety, jobs, the economy, controlling our spiral taxes, and the battle of opiates that surges many homes, turning them into horrors and turning our streets into battlefields. You'll hear more about these plans as we debate the critical issues facing our city. For 16 years, I've dedicated my life to public service and making Fall River a better place for our families. With your vote, I can be in a better position to make a difference in the direction our city takes, and we can restore honesty, hard work, compassion, and judgment to the mayor's office. This decision is yours for the future of your children and grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll go to Mayor Pereira.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank WSAR for putting on this debate, Fall River Community Media for filming this debate, and of course our moderator and my opponent for being here today. I also want to thank all the listeners that are out there via Facebook, over the airwaves, and on television for tuning in for really what is the last few days of this election, an election that will decide the fate of the next 2 years and hopefully beyond. I think that I am well prepared and will continue to be prepared to continue to serve as your mayor. I have served over the last 2 years, and over those last 2 years, we have increased services, not decreased services. We have also eliminated the $120 household trash fee, which my opponent supported, along with her 40-year, 4-decade career of voting for increases in fees, like the stormwater fee and tax increases. We've been eliminating fees and looking at other ways to eliminate other fees and taxes, such as the purple bags, which will be eliminated if I am reelected. We've added more police officers, more firefighters. We, for the first time, was able to exceed net school spending and avoid layoffs to our teachers or pink slips. we have been able to fix the city's finances. We went from $500,000 in stabilization to a certified almost $8 million in stabilization funds after I requested transfer from the city council. So we have done everything that we possibly can to put the city on a right course, a course that is for the future, a stable future, a stable progress. We don't need change right now. We've experienced a lot of turmoil over the last several years, which led to many, many different mayors and instability. At this particular point in time, we have stability. We have stable progress. And that has been the hard work of myself and many of the great employees of the city of Fall River. So I ask that you vote for me, Jazel Correa II, on November 7th so that we can continue this stable progress. And if we're going to get into a debate about judgment, we can talk about judgment, but my judgment as mayor has been one that has been positive, proactive, and one that wants to move the city forward. My opponent's judgment has been totally opposite of that, and that will come forward throughout the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Correa. If we could just quickly, just to reiterate, each candidate will be asked a question. They will have 90 seconds to respond, and then the opponent will have 30 seconds to rebut, and then there could be further rebuttals after that. So we're going to start off with a question from Alan Zarek in our newsroom.
We're curious if you will vote yes or no on the Home Rule Charter revisions, and why or why not.
And this question is for Mayor Correa first.
So I didn't hear the first part. I think it was I didn't have my headphones on, but I think it was the charter.
He asked you about the charter, why you would vote for it or why not.
Okay, thank you. So I supported the charter initiative via my office, making sure the funds were available, the necessary meetings could take place, and our representative, who was Kathy Ann Viveris, was part of the process, as well as the wonderful Charter Commission. However, my vote will be no on this particular charter, only because it's an all-or-nothing kind of situation, and there are specific pieces that I strongly disagree with. There are so many different forms of government, and at this particular point in time, to erode the integrity of the mayor's position and put the mayor, for example, on all the boards and commissions, I think is not a fair process. So I think things like that and other elements of the charter have made me a little bit wary of supporting it. I look at communities like Taunton, Massachusetts. The mayor actually serves on the city council in Taunton. So you have a situation there where imagine if the mayor served on the city council here, it'd be a totally different city council. So I'm not saying that our form of government is the best. I think there can be changes, but those changes are not, I think, produced in this particular charter. So my vote will be no.
All right. Councillor Pereira with a rebuttal.
When I look at the charter, I look at the fact that the Charter Commission individuals were elected and voted on by the citizens of Fall River, as the rest of us are elected and voted on. I think that the charter is up to each individual person on what they feel is best for the community. That's called a democracy. Whatever charter is passed, if this is passed or not passed, that's the charter that I will work with when I'm elected mayor. Thank you.
All right. Unless there's a rebuttal, we'll move on. Would you?
So I think
Yeah,
the
correct.
specific question was, are you voting yes or no?
Yes.
And so I just want to reiterate that there was no answer from my opponent, and I gave a very clear answer. And I think that's, again, showing the different type of leadership that I'll provide and continue to provide.
That's not showing leadership. See, 2 years ago when you were elected, when you voted, you took a picture holding your ballot up. I happen to have pride in my ballot, and that the fact that I have the right to vote whichever way I want, for whoever I want, and that's private. That's part of the democracy of our country.
All right. We're going to move on to our next question, which is going to come from Rick Oliveira. As for Councillor Pereira, correct?
Correct. So, Linda, we have a scenario here where we have two initiatives in front of the city of Fall River. One being the current scenario with the purple bags and the trash. The other being the new Durfee High School proposal. If you had to choose between keeping one or going for the Durfee High School or getting rid of purple bags, which one would you choose and how would you finance it?
I think I would choose the school because the school is very necessary. I feel that in talking about the school, we also have to look at a good way to finance it because honestly, if you go with a debt override, you're going to be looking at $300 a year added to your tax bill over the next 20 years, plus the increase of 2.5%. But I believe that a new school is necessary, but I'm going to wait for the results to come back to discuss with the City Council and the school committee. See, that's a piece of judgment that I find sometimes lacking. This is a big issue for the city of Fall River, yet it's not an issue that's discussed with the City Council or with the school committee. And I think that falters the type of leadership that I would have. I want to discuss important issues with other elected members of our community and others, but specifically the elected members. People elect you to serve. You need to work together to come to a consensus.
All right. And Mayor Correa?
So I don't think it's a choice of either or. So we would be able to do both under my leadership and administration. A lot of people said there's no way we could get rid of the $120 trash fee and still do all the other things that we did. In previous years, many of those years, Councillor Pereira was on the city council, either in the leadership role or not. We had to choose between public safety or education, and on top of that, creating new fees, purple bags, $120 trash fees. Back in history, the stormwater fee. We proved in the last 2 years that you could eliminate the trash fee, you could fund public safety at a higher degree, and you could actually spend over net school spending by $1.4 million. I'm going to prove that again if reelected. And all you have to do is look at the track record. I did it in the last 2 years because of the wonderful team that we have, and we'll do it again. We've already begun to kind of segment off some of our debt capacity to absorb at least 50%, hopefully, of the debt of a New Durfee high school. It's very important that a New Durfee high school is built. It's got to be built at an affordable cost. I've reined in and made sure that the team that's putting together the proposal for Durfee High School shaved as much of the extras that were not necessary for the new school to make it the best possible school for our community. But the trash bags, I've made a commitment to eliminate the trash bags. They don't work. There's people that use them. There's people that don't use them. The fining situation has been out of control for several years. We need to eliminate those trash bags, and we'll generate other revenues, like the billboard revenues, like the medical marijuana revenues, and other revenues through solar energy projects that we're working on now.
Okay.
So we're very excited about that.
All right. And we're going to, if we're clear on that, we can move on to the next question.
I don't have a rebuttal.
Would you like one?
I would. You know, I sit here and I'm in amazement. We got rid of a $120 fee. Really? Does that mean that Easy Disposal is picking up our trash for free? No. It goes to the taxes. Net school spending. Police are being paid. Money went over to pay for police officers. Money went over to pay for health insurance. And billboards and marijuana sales, you don't even know when that's coming. You can't come with facts on things that may happen. And 50% of our debt, not 50% yet. Some of our schools, we're still paying out for 10 years.
All right, we're going to cut
So
you off.
this is the point about honesty.
We're going to go back to Mayor Correa.
You don't have to take my word for it. Just look at the record. I said we would eliminate the fee, and we did, and we still funded things that people in the past were not able to fund, were not able to increase. That's what we did. And on this particular point, I don't know what you're talking about when you talk about Easy Disposal getting paid. Of course they're getting paid, but they're getting paid through, like you just said, regular tax dollars. That's not a bad thing. That means that you're getting a city service within your tax bill. That's what we're doing. But there's no question that people in this community are saving $120 per year per household because of the efforts of this administration. That's a fact. That's not a lie. That's not honesty. You continue to throw out these words, honesty and judgment and all these things, when there's one person at the table here that has bad judgment, and that's not by me. That's said by other people, not myself.
All right, that's time.
$120 fee. Whether I'm paying it through my taxes or paying it as a fee, it's still coming out of my pocket. You see, I own property in the city, and in my real estate taxes alone this year, I paid over $25,000, not counting all the other fees that come along with owning property. How many tenants that would charge an extra $10 from their landlord when the 120 fee came in? How many of those got the $10 back? They didn't, because it's only being paid in
All
a
right,
different
that's
venue.
time. And going back to Mayor Correa for one more.
So, again, here's the issue. In previous years, you're trying to dupe the public. In previous years, the last 4 years before my administration, you had maximum tax increases, the maximum. You had purple bags, another $1.7 million in generation, which was projected at $3 million, which never met the projections. And then the very next year, you had Sam Sutter come in as mayor, you had maximum tax increases, and you have the institution of the household trash fee. This year, you did have tax increases this past year, but you also had the elimination of the fee. And that's the point I'm trying to make. You had a history of all the taxes going up, all the water bills going up, which you voted for, and you also had these new fees being instituted. I'm trying to roll back those fees. I'm trying to get rid of them. I will get rid of the trash fee. I did get rid of the trash fee, and I'll get rid of the purple bags. And yeah, you're going to pay taxes because you can't escape taxes, but guess what? I'm going to do everything I can to reduce those taxes and to offset them.
All right, and that's time. We are going to take a quick break right now. We're going to be coming back after that break. All right, we are back. The 2017 mayoral debate here on WSAR. Again, thank you to the Bristol County Chamber of Commerce, the Fall River Municipal Credit Union, Tom Corey and Standard Pharmacy, Carl's Collision, and St. Anne's Credit Union. And we're going to go with our question. It's going to go to Alan right now. Thank you very much. Alan?
We're curious how Fall River could create additional revenue streams that taxpayers would not have to be responsible for. How's that done?
Councillor Pereira, I believe. Yes.
I think by bringing in new business is a great way to increase without affecting the tax rate. You need to spur the economy a little better. We have the location. There are so many benefits that we have into Fall River. It's a matter of working with economic development to see things like that happen. And I agree. I think the solar farms are good. Selling water is a good thing. I just don't think it's a good thing to sell water to a bad product. But there are numerous things that can be generated, but economic development is the key. Educating our workforce for jobs that they have money in their pocket to be able to spend. If you don't have money in your pocket to spend, the economy doesn't generate itself. That's it, Rich?
30 more
I'm
seconds. yeah.
sorry. I didn't really see that. But I think it's basically on economic development and getting economic development into the city of Fall River, developing our waterfront. I think that's key, having that multi-use faceted at the waterfront. Those are the types of things that need to occur in Fall River.
All right, and we'll go over to Mayor Correa.
So this is something that I campaigned on 2 years ago, making sure that we are doing everything we possibly can to reduce the tax burden and fee burden on taxpayers. You've seen me do that by eliminating the trash fee, and you'll see it again when I eliminate the purple bags. But in this particular case, in terms of alternative revenue streams, we've also successfully done that. So you see us refinancing old debt. That's very important. Increasing the city's bond outlook was a major step. And when we refinanced old debt, and we discovered this when we were taking care of privatization of trash collection, you had the city of Fall River financing police cars that only last 3 years for 15 years. So paying that debt long term is actually coming out of the taxpayer's pocket. So refinancing a lot of that old debt that in previous years was used to bring down the debt payments was a major step with our financial team. In addition, you see us with the billboards. That's something that's being permitted at the state level now. If we can successfully cite those billboards, which, although is not cited yet, will be cited, we're pretty confident. You'll see us generate at least $1 million there. You'll see us also generate at least $1 million to offset water rates. I know people are very concerned about increased water and sewer rates. With our solar project, we just got the bids back. You'll see us reduce our water rates or at least stabilize them. And you'll see us with the marijuana contracts. This is a major shift across the state of Massachusetts. And we have one of the strongest host community agreements that would allow us to get up to 4% of gross revenues, as well as a pilot agreement of $50,000 a year per facility. So those are all the alternative revenues that the city is now going to receive due to this administration. Thank you.
All right, and we're going to get a 30-second rebuttal from Councillor Pereira.
Again, I hear about these purple bags. It is hysterical that at one of the debates that we had, the mayor held up a paper. I have the answer right here. We already have it budgeted. And then when the council had a meeting and said to Kathy Viveris and Mary Sahadi about that plan, I think Mrs. Viveris's comment was that it was going to be based on billboards and marijuana, et cetera, and that the mayor was more optimistic than she. Our bond rating, our outlook has changed. Our bond rating is still an A2. The bond rating didn't change, and we're still financing through the state. Outlook is just negative or positive, but the bond rating remains an A2.
All right, and Mayor Correa?
So I specifically said the bond outlook. So the bond outlook went from exactly what Councilor Pereira said, negative to positive. I think positive is good. My campaign is positive. The city's bond rating is positive. We're headed in a positive direction. She wants to head in a negative direction. So yes, she's right. The bond outlook went from negative to positive. That's a good thing. Don't try and trick people about that. And then in terms of the purple bags, we do have a plan. But the council's asking for a legitimate, fully developed plan earlier than any other administration has ever been asked for an outlook of a future budget. That's not fair, but we do have an early budget planned.
All right. We're going to move on to our next question, and that's coming from Rick Oliveira.
The issue of homelessness continues to confront Fall River. We also have an issue with people on the street corners peddling for money. We have an issue with homeless for our veterans. What is the solution to Fall River's veterans issue and with its peddler issue with the people asking for money?
We'll start with Mayor Correa.
The peddler issue is a serious issue. You know, I've met with several convenience stores and businesses throughout the city with people on street corners looking for money. And in some cases, there are people in need that are hungry, and in other cases, there are people that are abusing our streets and actually, you know, making significant amounts of money from peddling. So we have to really get our arms around that. Unfortunately, there's a lot of legal elements to that issue, but I think it's, again, giving people the opportunity to have a good job in the city of Fall River, making sure that Stepping Stone and their new homeless shelter, which is really an amazing homeless shelter, continues to be funded, and open arms are given to those individuals. But in terms of the city with veterans, I mean, we have done more in this administration for veterans than I think in a long time. We've given the Veterans Center $150,000 over the last 2 years. We'll continue to give them $75,000 that they weren't previously getting every single year to ensure that those people can find a job. Our veterans who we care for, who we love, who we thank for the service to this country, making sure they can get a job in veteran preference housing through a community development agency will be very important.
All right, and Councillor Pereira.
Homelessness is a very sad state of affairs. And there are legal challenges, but there was, I believe it's in New Hampshire, they even had a sign that your donation could result in a fatality. And many people that are begging, panhandling, are people who have addiction issues. So we really need to focus more on what we do for addiction in this community. And we have failed to do that. We have to do some education and prevention and aftercare services. People that come to Fall River for drug treatment, if they're not following the rules in a program and they're turned away from the program, they end up living in our streets. And that shouldn't be. Years ago, if you didn't follow the rules, you were sent back to your community where you had support of family and friends. You don't know Fall River, and you're wandering the streets of Fall River.
All right, Mayor Correa.
So, you know, Councilor Pereira continues to say that we have failed. I don't think anybody's failed. I think it's a nationwide issue that even the president has declared a nationwide problem, and everybody knows it's a problem. Nobody in this room is going to come up with the magic pill, which would be an irony, of course, the magic pill to solve the opiate crisis. What we've done is we've implemented Project Reconnect, which sends an officer, sends a pastor, sends a follow-up counselor to people's homes the same week that they experience a drug overdose. That's been a very successful program that's saving lives, and the opiate task force that I implemented continues to expand with some great volunteers. So it's a shame that those volunteers are being called out by my opponent.
That's time, and Councillor Pereira.
He doesn't know what time means. And if you were a student of mine, I would tell you when the gentleman holds up a sign that says time, that means you're done. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, we have time for one more question before the break.
Do I get to rebut on that?
Well, I thought that was your rebuttal.
no.
That was your rebuttal, Counselor.
No, it was
You got
to
10
the
seconds.
moderator.
You have 10 seconds.
I think it was an abysmal failure, and Mike Aguiar certainly proved that you haven't done anything to help out with the opioid problem. You put a friend in. That's what you did.
All right, that's time. Mayor Correa, if you'd like to respond to that.
First of all, the belittling is disrespectful to myself, the office of mayor, saying that, if I was a student of yours, nobody wants to hear that, Counselor, so you should keep those comments and thoughts to yourself. And then secondly, abysmal failure. What about the lives we're saving with the Help Center at Government Center? What about all the people, Beth Fonts, our EMS department, our fire department, our police officers, the pastors, all the people coming together to save lives every day? You spit in the face of all the work that we've done over the last 2 years. I'm not going to solve the problem, but we're making a difference, and we're saving people's lives.
Councillor Pereira.
I'm not spitting in anybody's face, but you came on board saying that you were going to have this drug czar and all this was going to happen. It didn't happen. All the people you named are all people who have been doing it prior to you getting there. There are plenty of agencies in Fall River helping people. As a leader, those people should all be put together.
All right, that's time. I think Mayor Correa would like.
That's so not true here. First of all, Project Reconnect was an initiative that Mike Aguiar began and continues with Beth Fonts. The Opiate Task Force is the mayor's Opiate Task Force that I established with all those different agencies, including STAR and so many others, Stepping Stone and many of the startup agencies that have come forward, and the parents that are trying to solve this problem and cope with this issue. That's all initiatives that I began. So you can't say that hasn't made an impact. It's a shame that you continue to say that.
All right, and Councillor Pereira?
There is a group that meets once a month at the hospital with all of the providers and players together, and the city does not participate
That is
in
a
that.
lie.
Okay.
That's what you should participate in.
All right, let's break it there.
It's not a lie. Thank
And
you.
we are going to take a break. All right, we're coming back with more of our debate. I believe our question is coming from Rick, correct? It's Alan Zarek's question. I'm sorry, and it will be going to Councillor Pereira first, I believe. All right. So, Alan, if you could ask your question, please.
And today is 1 November. The deadline is passed now, that October 31st deadline for a $100,000 cashier's check to be presented to purchase the King Philip Mill. So now, what's the best solution to remove that structure, or structures in this case, and redevelop that particular property?
All right, Rick, and if you could just kind of recap that for all our listeners, make sure everyone could get that on.
Facebook Live who did not hear it. The question is the process, the deadline for the King Philip Mill complex was yesterday. What do we do now with this property?
All right, Councillor Pereira.
Well, I don't know what's happened after the deadline of October 31st. Prior to that, I think I would have sat down with the developer, looked at the 4 issues that were had in that development, being the zoning, the HDIP, when a demolition survey had to be completed, and the money that the preservation, the $100,000 that had been given. With all that being said, we don't know. We really were never part of the loop on the entire project, and these are the issues that I have. That there's not the communication that we should have, and for the Historic Commission to meet with the developer and come up with suggestions that would even make the project better. I think the mayor called Mr. Dias into his office and told him he could either resign or he would fire him. Those letters were provided because Judge Macy is the one that wrote the letters, and he provided them at the council meeting. Remember, Mr. Dias is a volunteer who works diligently on preserving the historic nature of the community. I can't really answer that because I don't know what the mayor has done with that project.
All right, and we'll go to Mayor Correa.
So again, the question I believe was, what do we do now with the King Philip Mill? And here's somebody that wants to be mayor that gave you and the public no answer on what she would do. I said very clearly in the last debate, we wait for the deadline to pass. Once the deadline passes, unless Rafi Weiss and the development group that bid could come up with $100,000 by the deadline, which is today, then we would seek another developer. We've begun that process. We had to wait till the deadline, but the goal in the development there will still be market rate, no subsidized housing, demolition of some of the property, and a park for all of our community to enjoy in the South End, and access to Cook Pond. We have progressed more on the King Philip property that has plagued that neighborhood as a public safety hazard for the last 13 plus years than any other administration. We are moving as closest as possible to redevelopment, and there has been a lot of roadblocks put up by my opponent and others in this community, but we will overcome those roadblocks to ensure safety of those neighbors, as well as a redevelopment project that everybody, including the Historic Society, the neighborhood, and the entire community can enjoy.
Is that project dead right now?
It is not dead.
Councillor?
First of all, I said that I would have met with Mr. Wise and resolved the 4 issues. There have been emails that have floated to your office, to the entire city council, that Mr. Wise has requested a meeting and has contacted the administration, and he has received no response. I would respond to him. I would have him come in.
All right, that's time. And Mayor Correa?
That's
Last
again
one.
not accurate. Matt Thomas, our tax title lawyer, has contacted Mr. Weiss through email, saying that this conversation would not take place via email, and that there would be a meeting after the deadline if he could come up with the terms of the agreement. There was no way he was trying to wiggle out of this, come up with every excuse in the book, because he did not have the $100,000 that he could have easily paid yesterday, but he chose not to. The gentleman, on my opinion, solely my opinion, has unfortunately, created a situation that he duped some of the finance companies and the different people and caused some problems. But we are confident that the development will go forward.
All right, that's time.
He didn't want to pay the $100,000 if he didn't have the zoning passed, if he didn't have the HDIP. There were situations that needed to be resolved. So meeting with him to resolve those issues is what a leader does. And now if you're saying that, he duped people, then who vetted him?
All right, we're going to stop it there. We're going to go on to our next question, which is coming from our Rick Oliveira.
We're going to stick with economic development. Mayor, you raised the issue of the fact that there were people working against you on this project. Linda, you came out with your own economic development plan. Are the people in Fall River, should they be confident that we have economic development well in hand with all the division that we've seen with the Office of Economic Development, this project falling through, and other issues?
Mayor Pereira?
So Ken Fiola took himself off this project, as I previously stated. He then retracted his statements that he had made publicly regarding his involvement. He took himself off in March. He wasn't defunded until July 1st. So, clearly there was that's an issue that he decided to take an initiative and get himself off the project. So that whole nonsense about if you had been on the project or not is truly nonsense. Secondly, economic development hasn't missed a beat. We have continued to deliver small business lending to small businesses in our community. We saved 81 jobs on Bedford Street by getting a $750,000 grant from the state, which Ken Fiola was not able to get, was actually working against for the business, saving 81 jobs, job retention, and growing those jobs with workforce training to an additional 31 positions at that sewing manufacturer on Bedford Street. We did our small business grant program, which created 40 jobs over the last 2 years, and we continue with a plan that I will announce shortly after the election. The problem here is I would lose credibility if I just came up with some crazy announcement right before the election that was not finalized. It has to be the right announcement. So I brought together some very important, very smart people to the table that are bankers, that are business owners in our community to help us create the right economic development policy for the next decade and beyond. That is what this administration has done. We are serious about economic development, and you're going to continue to see some great stuff happen with this administration.
All right, Councillor Pereira?
Well, I'm interested in putting together an Office of Economic Development with smart business people. I've got to tell you that I think the Office of Economic Development and the 30 volunteers that they have there are all very smart business people and bankers and community leaders who have brought us Amazon, who have brought us South Coast Marketplace. I think that we need to have more of a connection and that the mayor's office should pull in. There should be a group that's put together with education leaders, etc. But you say Ken went off of the project. You went off of the board.
Mayor Correa?
So those volunteers are absolutely great people, and I brought the executive board of FROED to the table 6 different times to negotiate the fate of economic development in the city. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to a resolution due to the fact that they owed the city $113,000 in backed rent. They owe $3.2 million of debt on a building that's not worth $1 million. And Ken Fiola continues to be paid $202,000 without any benchmarks, without any reporting, without any oversight. Those were the major issues that we continue to face.
All right. Councillor?
Honestly, when I hear that we're taking FROED to court, that they haven't paid, that was pushed out. That was extended, that court date, by the administration, not by anyone else. And you have 2 former mayors that are testifying on the Office of Economic Development's behalf.
All right. We're going to move on to one last question before the break, and that's coming from our newsroom in Alan Zarek.
We're curious here that, let me find this question that I want. There we go. It would appear that both of you are on record as being in favor of doing away with the pay-as-you-throw program. Now, one of the provisions of that contract, if memory serves me correctly, is that the city will be on the hook for whatever inventory remains of the purple bags. There are also other costs associated with this. Does anyone know how much it will actually cost to get out of that contract and what the city will do once pay-as-you-throw is over in terms of ridding itself of trash, solid waste, and recycling. How does all this work in a post-pay-as-you-throw era?
Councillor, you can answer first.
Well, first of all, there is money in surplus that could have been used to eliminate the purple bags now. However, with the purple bags, I don't know who's manufacturing them at this point, but it appears that they're being made even thinner than they were before. You can get rid of the purple bags, but it will have to be picked up within the taxes. The biggest problem with purple bags isn't the bag itself. The problem that I hear from people is they're upset that they've been purchasing these purple bags and other people have not. So the enforcement piece was never there. And I think that the purple bags, we can absorb that, but people need to learn to recycle properly, because right now we're paying $108 a ton for recycling. If we can get the community to recycle appropriately, then the cost of the recycling is going to go down a lot. So that is going to help us with the gap from the purple bags. And the bags, we have to pay them 3 months out. But the program is almost ending. Our contract is almost ending with them in another year.
Mayor?
So a couple things. First of all, there is no term on the contract. The contract is just a 3 month in advance. You have to cancel within
Yep.
3 months.
True.
So that's the first thing. So secondly, the $108 a ton in recycling, this administration has brought that number down to $40 a ton, $40 to $48 a ton variable rate, not 108. That was one of the problems that I faced when I first took office. We've brought it down. Secondly, and most importantly, the councillor just said that it could be picked up in taxes. She was just arguing with me a few questions ago that the $120 trash fee was picked up in taxes. So again, it's double talk. Our goal is to eliminate the purple bags, ensure that recycling continues with volunteer recycling program, as well as building the transfer station that overwhelmingly passed by the taxpayers in a ballot question 2 years ago. That is our goal. We've begun that process. These things take time. I need more than 2 years, and that's why I'm seeking another 2 years to continue the work that has already begun. This is not a campaign promise. We have already begun negotiating with potential companies to redevelop the Lewiston Street old incinerator into a transfer station that will give us the control over our trash and our recycling so that we can control costs and make sure that taxpayers continue to get savings within their tax dollars and don't have the inconvenience of having go to a store and not find purple bags there, and you got to go to another store and they only have small bags left. I get it. It's inconvenient. It hasn't worked, and it's got to go. I didn't vote to make it a law. My opponent did. I want it gone, and I will get rid of the purple bags.
All right, rebuttal?
Well, my rebuttal would be that, yes, I said that it could come out of taxes, and that's not double talk, but I wouldn't do certain things that have been done, like take $10 million for streetscapes because I want safe streets. I wouldn't have paid someone $25,000 to come in and sell real estate property when they didn't even have a license in Fall River, and I wouldn't have been spending $100,000 on rebranding the city. So that money in itself is also programmed in.
All right, that's time. Mayor Correa?
So again, once again, the point here is that we're going to get rid of the purple bags. We have a sustainable way to do it. We're going to build a transfer station that will give us the destiny of our own trash and our own future, something that the council has voted time and time against. There's been so many issues that I've heard her talk about that, again, do not get at the root problem or has been unsuccessful.
All right. And with that, we're going to go to another quick break. All right, we're going to go back to another question here. And this one is coming from Rick Oliveira.
Both of you continue to talk about the purple bag situation, but where do we go in the future as far as water situation? Both of you have talked about this as being another potential revenue stream. Right now we have the sale of the water that's somewhat controversial in some areas. But is this something that Fall River will be able to maximize going forward in the future, or is this something that Fall River will protect?
All right, we'll start with Mayor Correa.
I think it's a combination of the two. We have one of the largest bioreserves in the state of Massachusetts. We also are very fortunate due to our founding fathers here in the community, our forefathers. We have one of the best water supplies in the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So we are very lucky for that fact. We've got to do everything we can to balance the fact that we don't want taxpayers to be burdened by water and sewer rates, but at the same time continue to protect our water. We have an amazing water department led by Terry Sullivan. At the last meeting, he explained that we have over 4 million gallons per day in excess capacity. That's everybody getting water all the time. That's the excess capacity. We also have reserve water as well, and we have an additional in the south Watuppa Pond. If necessary, that could be converted to a water supply. Right now, it is used by people that enjoy the water there. So there are many options for water. But I think what you may be getting at is maybe a strategic plan over the next 50 years, because way longer past many people that'll be in government. The water should be prioritized as to how are we going to sell and we continue to sell our water, but how do we protect that water and sell it so that taxpayers get a break on their water rates and sewer rates, but at the same time we have a long, sustainable situation for our water.
All right. And we're going to go to Councillor Pereira.
We've talked about this several years ago to look at bottling companies to come in. You could have FEMA get bottled water from other countries for our military troops. Why are they not getting it from our country? And I think reaching out to all bottling companies would be another avenue of assisting with the taxpayers in Fall River, selling the water to them. Selling the water the way that we just did to Rhode Island, I don't think was a smart move. I think that there's a lot of issues there that people received, the water board received information just the night of the meeting. They didn't have enough information on it. And when I think of the fight that we had for LNG and how much Rhode Island came and helped us, I just think it's devastating that we're not there supporting Rhode Island.
All right. Mayor Correa?
So a couple points here. Number one, there's been a bottle of water study done. The city cannot do it due to the fact that it would require too much of our excess capacity, as well as the caps and the plastics necessary to make the water bottles would be too cost prohibitive for the city of Fall River. Now, if we partnered, which is something we've looked at, that's a possibility, but then again, you run into the problem of the excess capacity. In this particular case, of the 88,000 gallons maximum that we're selling to Burrville, or this new company potentially, which is actually not the energy company, but rather the water transportation company, is a maximum of 88,000 gallons over the next 3 years. We're in 2017. It's been reported that there's a 2020 delay on the building and the construction, if it's even permitted and built, this power plant. So that means the city just made $75,000 guaranteed for nothing, not even having to sell the water, which impacts the water rates positively. That was a smart decision. I know it's controversial, but it was a smart decision.
I'm going to cut you off there, Councillor.
I disagree that it was a smart decision. I think that you should have connected with people. If it was such a smart decision, why wasn't the council notified of it or anybody known about it when this happened in August? The neighborhood and the impact on that neighborhood of trucks, they weren't contacted either. Again, it's the lack of communication. And I don't think it was a smart decision. I've read up on all of what is happening in Rhode Island with the water supply.
All right. That's time. I think we're going to go on to our next question, which is going to come from our newsroom in Alan Zarek.
And as we continue coming up toward 1 o'clock on at WSAR, we're curious with the mayor no longer a member of the board of FROED and FROED itself in some sort of state of economic purgatory. We're curious as to what the city is doing regarding economic development, specifically the development and the cleaning up of the city pier, and who is actually handling economic development, if it is in fact being handled out of the mayor's office.
Okay, we're going to start with Councillor Pereira.
That's a good question. First of all, as mayor, I would never have resigned off of the Fall River Office of Economic Development Board, even if there were issues, even if I didn't agree with everything they were doing. In a leadership role, you have to stand tough and have backbone and stay there, not just walk away. And you're right, people are confused, don't know who is handling the economic development of the city. I know that Market Basket and the South Coast Plaza, when I met with Mr. Cohen, they were confused. They reached out to the city council president and myself because they were confused and weren't getting the information that they were looking for. So I think the Office of Economic Development is definitely needed. If it needs to be tweaked, it's tweaked. But if you have had meetings with people and discussions and you can't come to a compromise, you continue to work on it. I mean, the same thing, with the police department. You're in arbitration. You continue to work at it. You don't bring it to the point of arbitration. You don't bring Office of Economic Development to the same point to just walk away. That's not what a leader does.
All right, Mayor Correa.
So I have shown true leadership by taking on an organization that has been shrouded in mystery for 30 years, an issue that even Councillor Pereira suggested just several years ago with other councillors that it had to be brought into the mayor's office. The newspaper has talked about it. Everybody's talked about the fact that economic development has to be looked at. It's shrouded in mystery. Outside communities, outside developers like Mr. Cohen, who at the Business Expo said Fall River had a negative business reputation. Mr. Cohen reached out to Councilor Pereira and City Council President, and that fiasco at the City Council meeting regarding a liquor license nearly struck at the credibility of small businesses. So when you talk about somebody that has small businesses back and big businesses back, that's me. I am making the changes that are necessary, although sometimes difficult changes that other people didn't want to take on, that didn't want to ask the hard questions. I have magnified them and brought them to the forefront, and we're solving those issues.
All right, Councillor.
What Mr. Cohen said at White's was that it was frustrating to not know how to maneuver Fall River. In every community, there's political entities. In every community, there's roadblocks, and the Office of Economic Development leads you through those. And yes, I thought that the Office of Economic Development needed to share more with the council, and that's why we wanted an additional person to bring it all in, and that's what I've done on my plan.
All right, quick rebuttal, and then we're going to go to break.
So back to the original question, however, so economic development is being handled in my office right now through community development and a partnership with myself and the committee that we're organizing so that we can appoint a new executive director. I still feel that my original proposal, the RDA, Redevelopment Authority, and all these projects that the RDA has should really be the forefront of economic development. FROED is still in contract with RDA and is still working on the City Pier and the Biotechnology Park, and that's okay. We have no problem with that, and they will continue to do their job, and I'll continue to do mine.
All right, we're going to take a break now, and we're going to be back in a couple minutes with more of this debate. All right, we are back with our Fall River mayoral debate here on WSAR. Thanks again to the candidates and, of course, to our sponsors, the Bristol County Chamber of Commerce, the Fall River Municipal Credit Union, Tom Corey and Standard Pharmacy, Carl's Collision, and St. Anne's Credit Union. All right, we're going to get back into it here. We've got a question from Rick Oliveira, and Mayor Correa is going to answer first.
Okay, thank you, John. Earlier, you also talked about the situation. I want to continue on the economic development of the City Pier. And the question more specifically is, with the Office of Economic Development developing City Pier, what are the city controls and how do you have your plan enacted when someone else is doing it? I guess is in how much control do you have over what's going on at the City Pier and the Route 79 reconstruction?
This is a very important question. It is not FROED that's developing the City Pier. It is the Redevelopment Authority, and this has been the problem. This is the problem. The RDA is the entity that is a relationship entity with the city, but still independent. They've got powers that even the city doesn't have. The power of eminent domain, certain powers that the governor appoints actually a member to that board. That is the entity developing the biopark. That's the entity developing the City Pier, and the entity that will continue to develop and redevelop our downtown. When I first took office, I asked the RDA to do an urban renewal plan for both our downtown and waterfront. Those are the things that are happening. FROED has been a consultant, a facilitator. They are not the only ones out there that can do that, and they may be the ones that continue to do that. They still have a contract that I and the RDA have not canceled, and that will remain in place. And it's not that there's no faith in FROED. They have hit some home runs, Amazon, Market Basket, that they've been part of. But the question is Fall River a World Series team with our economic development? I think not. I think we can do better. I think we can do more. I think we can grab jobs that we're supposed to be grabbing. We were promised $80,000, $90,000 jobs in our biotechnology park, and we haven't gotten those. Not to say that the other jobs that are there are not needed, but there are certain things that have not been enacted, and that's why we had to take a hard look. But there are controls there because the RDA is still a board of the city, so there are many, many controls that make us partners, and that's what I want. I want partnership. Sometimes an agent of change that I've been gets rocky, and that's okay because the agent of change needs to provide that change. That's sometimes difficult.
All right, and Councillor Pereira?
I just think that in economic development, there needs to be more hands on get deck, and we need to have a Fall River Economic Development Council, which has legislative, executive, legislative steering committee, have it comprised of the mayor, the city council president, the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, the president of FROED, the chairman of the Central Labor Council. Let's bring labor in on this. The chairman of the Redevelopment Authority and a couple of other members. You need to pull it all together. This is the problem. It's unknown. People don't know. We can sit here and we can talk about, well, they should be doing this and this one should be doing that. You need to communicate and you need to pull it all together. And that's what's lacking. Economic development is huge for Fall River, but we really need to work at it more inclusively than exclusively.
So, a couple things here. Number one, it sounds like we want another committee. It sounds reminiscent of the Sam Sutter era where there was committees for everything and nothing got done. Trash committees that came up with new trash fees, committees on education to whether or not we should fund schools. I mean, just craziness. Here we have another committee on top of the 30 volunteers of FROED, on top of the RDA. It makes no sense. There is no plan. That's just a nonsense comment by my opponent. There is no plan for economic development from that other side. I look at a city that has not prioritized its downtown, has nearly lost its downtown, has nearly lost its South End that now is seeing a revitalization finally. That's what I see. I see grants that we're getting that we previously didn't get. There's a new leadership change and there's a new air of progress in the city of Fall River,
Right, we're gonna
and
cut
that's
you
going to continue.
We're going to cut you off there. Councillor?
That's not nonsense. You need to bring the players together. All of these people that serve on this council are people who are working in their little cocoons. You need to pull them together. See, I am very inclusive of people, and I think that economic development needs to be very inclusive. Small business needs to be able to be involved as well. You look at a business coming in that wants to develop in Fall River. Let's give them all the information they need so that they can do it.
All right, one more from Mayor Pereira.
And that's exactly what we've done. We've had small business that were turned away from FROED. We've had big businesses that were turned away from FROED. And we have helped them be successful in the city. We need more economic development, not less. We don't need it to be done in the shadows by somebody paid $202,000 a year with no benchmarks to achieve. We don't need to look back and say, how come our downtown died while our waterfront has marginally progressed? It's been 30 years. There's more change that is needed, and we need all the players to participate, but not through another committee. What are we going to have? FROED 30 volunteers, Chamber of Commerce more volunteers, this new council that Councilor Pereira wants to have, the RDA. It's too much, too many hands in the cookie jar. We need a strategic plan, which is what we will provide for the next decade of economic development policy in the city of Fall River.
Councilor Pereira, last word on
It's
this?
not having hands in the cookie jar. It's all of those people coming to the table to discuss something openly. A lot of what's happened in downtown or lack thereof, we also need to look at these abandoned buildings, get them back onto the tax rolls, use the building blocks program that Mayor Flanagan came out with, and there's other things to be done. There's RFPs that you can do to say specifically what you'd like to have done on buildings that we gain tax title over.
All right, we're going to move on to our next question, and that's going to come from our newsroom and Alan Zarek.
And we're curious at this juncture of the afternoon, what is the most feasible solution for Fall River to contribute its share of the cost of a proposed new BMC Durfee High School?
All right, and we'll start with Councilor Pereira.
I mentioned that before in an earlier statement that if we're just going to look at debt exclusion, that's just going to add to the tax base of about $300 a year over the next 20 years, plus the additional 2.5 that we go up all the time. And I believe that a new school is necessary, but I really want to wait until we get the results to come back, and we need to have a discussion with the school committee and the council. And, I think that we need to weigh in the factors as well, because to add that much burden to people in Fall River that are elderly, holding onto their homes, having a difficult time to meet all their expenses. They're the people that made Fall River. They're the founders. They were the bricklayers of our community. And we have to be sensitive to their needs as well. So bringing in the economic development, to bring in more money, to generate more income into the city. Perhaps the marijuana facilities will come through. How much money is that going to give us? And that may help us as well. We definitely need a school, but I think the financing of it needs to be looked at overall. What can people afford?
All right, Mayor?
So now it's perhaps the marijuana revenues will be there. Now it's perhaps other revenues. Here we have again another two-sided, Linda. You know, I have already said that we're going to have marijuana revenues and new revenues to offset taxes and offset fees. And when I said that, she criticized me. Now she's saying perhaps it'll work. The point here is that this administration was proactive with the new Durfee High School. We are building a certain amount of debt capacity that doesn't go to the tax base, that will be able to be afforded by the city itself. We're looking to hopefully achieve $40 million of debt capacity that we can afford ourselves. But I think that the city has the opportunity through a debt exclusion to also weigh in and voice their opinion, much like the other ballot questions that will be on the ballot this November. So if that is the route that we choose to go, a debt exclusion, the entire community and those that want to come out and vote for it can come out and vote for it, and all the information will be displayed, the cost breakdown, the new school itself. There's no question in my mind, as the mayor of the city, I will fight for a new Durfee High School. It's needed. There's parts that are dilapidated, but it's also my responsibility as the steward of the community's money, our tax dollars, to do everything I possibly can, which is what I'm doing, to offset the cost of that new Durfee High School. That means that the tiles in this Durfee High School have to be examined to make sure that the best quality tiles that are the most durable, but also the most cost-effective tiles. That means the school square footage has to be put into perspective, and making sure that all these different pieces come together with our excellent building team, as well as our debt capacity that's been analyzed and looked at to make sure we can afford it.
All right, 30 seconds.
Don't change my words. We're not going to build to Durfee next year. So we have time. When we talked about the other, we talked about bags for next year. So there is clearly a difference. And yes, I agree that we need to do a school, but what I'm saying is you have to also include the school department and the city council to the table to make decisions. You just can't think that you can do it all on your own. That's been a problem.
Mayor?
Nobody's making any decisions on Durfee High School by themselves. I have an entire team of people ranging from Jim Karam to Nick Chris from Bay Coast Bank to Missy Panchley to Ken Pacheco to Chris Gallagher that are looking at the best cost scenario, and then that proposal will go to the school committee, will go to the city council, and if necessary, go to the taxpayers. That is what I'm doing. I'm building those relationships. That's a very important piece to this puzzle. And in terms of, my opponent just basically admitted that the plans for alternative revenues certainly are in motion and will work. And that has been the goal, and those things take time. So I need more time to ensure that those resources are put to the right uses.
All right.
And that's why I continue to ask for your vote.
And we're out of time on that one. All right, we're going to move on to our next question, which is coming from Rick, and it's going to be the mayor answering first.
Mayor, you talked about the marijuana being part of your initiative here. Right now, we have heard that there are as many as 8 different facilities looking to locate, you can clarify this, in the city of Fall River, and these things are often fluid. How much money do you expect that the city will be able to ascertain from not only the agreement, but also from the taxes? And how do we offset the social costs and impact of having marijuana facilities in our community, specifically with children, and the mixed message that we send them to stay off of drugs, but yet, down the street you might see a dispensary for recreational marijuana?
No, it's a fair question. I think that, number one, we have to look at how marijuana became legal in the state of Massachusetts. It was a ballot question, a referendum question, and the people have spoken on this issue. So we as legislators and executives of cities and towns have to respond appropriately. So I think the mixed message is a problem. You look at Colorado, they just banned marijuana gummy bear sales because it sends mixed messages to children. That's something that we can look at as local ordinances. If there are certain products that do give mixed messages to children, then we need to do that. But you look at smoking, children see people smoking, right? That's an issue. You look at marijuana, there's the edibles, there's also the creams that are people need sometimes, and that's going to be okay. But in terms of the city and its perspective, we made a financial decision, just like the water decision that we made. We knew that people were going to, towns and cities were going to open medical marijuana and recreational marijuana stores. We did not want to be one of the cities that missed out on the revenues and the product to the people that want it. That doesn't mean you have to. You don't have to go into a bar, you don't have to go into a liquor store, and you don't have to go into a marijuana shop. But the city of Fall River stands to make $200,000 to $250,000 from the get-go. No revenues from the sales yet. That was through a negotiated pilot agreement, because these are organized as nonprofits. Whether they are or not is still up for debate. But that's $250,000 between all 4 of the medical marijuana facilities and possibly recreational, and an additional 4% of their gross revenues to the city. That could be millions of dollars potentially one day as their sales ramp up, and that will go to Place to Fire, to educational programs, and reinvest in our community. So we're happy about the deal that we were able to get with the marijuana companies.
All right, Councillor Pereira.
I'll tell you how I feel about the marijuana dispensaries or the marijuana cultivation facilities. Back in November of 2013, I filed a resolution to look at, with Corporation Counsel, with the Chief of Police, to enact ordinances to regulate where those were going to be located in the city. I thought medical zones may be one alternative. That was put in November of 2013. The mayor at the time was on the council, serving on the ordinance committee. That was never brought up. There was never a discussion on that. Actually, there were 27 items on the ordinance committee that remained after the mayor left and went up to the 6th floor. That is huge. These nonprofit statuses that are given to facilities, people in the city don't know where they're located. Non-opposition letters, and people have bought property there. That was the wrong thing to do. That's not the type of leadership that I would have used.
All right, Mayor.
So that we followed the state regulations. There are already state regulations for where medical marijuana facilities cannot be located. It did not make sense to us, and I think it would have been an unfair practice to skirt the state law and come up with something that would have been prohibitive or not as business friendly. So we tried our best to vet properly those medical marijuana. We were approached by 16 companies, which may be the confusion. We were approached by 16 different companies, and we worked our way down to the 4 best that kind of went throughout the entire community. So I think that, our process was correct. And again, I didn't hear really any answer from my opponent.
Councillor.
We worked on what we thought were the best. I don't know who the we were, but the council certainly wasn't brought in to any of those discussions. I honestly question Globe Four Corner having a facility there at the old, where the Ukrainian club was, in that area. I don't think that's a really good spot for it.
But that's your opinion.
All right.
But we don't even know. Is it my turn or the mayor's turn?
It is
it
your
my
turn.
turn?
It is.
Sorry for having been interrupted. I think that the neighborhoods needed to play into this as well. You needed to get other people's opinions. The state can have rules and regulations. It doesn't mean that we can't have a say either. Of course we can.
All right. One more rebuttal for the
We
mayor?
did bring in neighborhood associations. In fact, Carlos Caesar of the Flint Neighborhood Association wrote a letter of support for the medical marijuana facility on Pleasant Street with the neighborhood support. So there are neighborhoods that have been consulted. We have done our best to make sure that all the views are represented as best we can. If the council wanted to participate, they very well could have through their, Health and Environmental Committee. They chose not to. It was never brought to anybody's attention. Everybody knew that letters were being signed, and it was not brought to anybody's attention. So, again, I think that we've been proactive. We're going to make $250,000 and possibly millions to provide more services to our community and offset tax dollars through this process.
You can't pick and choose what neighborhood groups you're going to speak to. Every neighborhood is an important neighborhood in the city. And to say that the council never brought it through, I brought it through in November of 2013. You failed to bring it to the ordinance committee.
All right. We're going to.
But at that time, Councillor, there had been no letters. There had been nothing. Now it was real. The law had changed by the state, so nobody in this particular council, with your leadership, under your leadership as the vice president of the council, brought it to anyone's attention.
Right.
So it wasn't even a law at the time in 2013.
That's right, because my resolution stated, let's be proactive rather than reactive and bring this forward. And you were there, and you could have brought it forward. Don't deny that.
It was not an issue at the time. It is an issue now, and you did not bring it forward when it was an issue.
And my leadership is to be proactive, not reactive.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. We're going to move on to our next question. That's coming from Alan in our newsroom, and Councillor Pereira will answer first.
We're curious about concerns that have been expressed earlier this year. STAR's request for a new clinic to include some 60 beds for narcotic rehabilitation. That Fall River, when doing so, might become the center for addiction treatment in New England. Is that a goal that Fall River should shoot for, perhaps? Or should some sort of cap or a limit be placed on the number of rehab beds in Fall River?
I have worked as a social worker for many years dealing with people that have addictions, and I agree that they need the assistance to live drug-free lives. However, I don't agree with putting another facility in the North End. I think that this is a state issue. It's not a Fall River issue. It's a national issue. It's a state issue. And every community needs to be able to assist people within their community. And it doesn't mean that people can't come to Fall River. And it doesn't mean that people from Fall River can't go to another community, because sometimes you need to get out of where you are to get some treatment. And that's okay. But for this facility to be built into North End, there's also a methadone component that comes with it. And I honestly, from all my years, do not feel that methadone has had the success that it should have. And I don't think that Fall River should be the drug capital of Massachusetts. Other communities need to step to the plate. This is a problem we all need to work on together, not just Fall River. I think Fall River has lots of services and programs, and we're trying to coordinate those.
Mayor Correa?
So here we have again a very interesting statement by my opponent. Not in the North End. I've heard that several times. So does that mean that she would support it in the South End? Does that mean she would support it in downtown? We don't know. Does that mean she would support it in the industrial park? We don't know, because Linda Pereira has a history of voting for one thing, changing her mind later, saying something, and doing the opposite. We don't know. I have been unequivocally clear that treatment is needed for those in need, and that STAR is a private organization that is totally incredible at treating individuals with substance abuse addictions in our community and those outside of our community. But the lie that they are treating more people from outside of Fall River than inside Fall River is simply just not true. 80% of the people that STAR helps are Fall River citizens, people in need. I get calls from all kinds of people, rich, poor, employed, unemployed, in between, and they tell me that my child needs help, my grandchild needs help, my cousin, my uncle, my brother, my sister, my spouse, all these people in need in our community. We've got to do everything we can to reduce the stigma, not increase the stigma around substance abuse prevention, but at the same time, give our police department and our EMS department the resources, like I've done, to combat and take drug dealers and drug traffickers off the streets of Fall River. And that's what we're going to continue to do to reduce the access to drugs. But I will never say that those in need that want treatment should not get treatment in their hometown. That will not come out of my mouth.
Councillor?
I think that oftentimes people need to go where they don't know the area to get treatment. Most people that have had success have gone away. I'm not saying don't put a treatment facility in the North End. I'm saying we don't need a treatment facility anywhere. We have to look at this on a state level. And the only way that they're going to support a treatment facility is to be able to have methadone component. And we have methadone components already. There's more to this than just this facility. There's other things that come into play.
Mayor Correa?
That's an inaccurate statement. That's one component of the facility. There are multiple components of the facility. There are high-paying jobs there. There are people in need that will get serviced at that facility. And then for you to state that most people have success in another when they go away from the community, you don't have those stats. You don't have those statistics. You're not a doctor. So don't poison the community with misinformation. That is not an accurate statement. You don't have the facts to back that up. If you're going to say something, make sure you have the facts.
What I told you is, as a social worker for 30 years,
in your opinion,
dealing with this is what I've seen. I'm telling you what I've seen, that people have success if they're out of the area for a while because they know where the dealers are. Their chance for relapse is greater in a community. Let them get the strength. Halfway houses work. Look at, let's talk about the sober houses that we're trying to implement into Fall River and don't have rules and regulations about that. That's something that, we need to look at as well.
That's time. Mayor, last word on
And
this?
there are many, many, many people in Fall River that come to Fall River, that are here in Fall River, that get treatment and are successful. You yourself have talked about those people. They didn't go away necessarily, so you can't, you don't have the facts for that. I don't think you answered the question at all. And I think that's very important that we are serious about the opiate epidemic. We have the opiate task force working every day. We have Beth Fonts and our EMS and our volunteers making sure that people get treatment immediately, not 2 weeks from now, not, God forbid, if they've already, relapsed so many times that they can't take it anymore. We need to treat our family, our people in Fall River, but get the drug dealers off the streets, which is what my plan is.
We're going to stop it there. We got one more question before the break. No, we're going to go to the break now. All right. We will go to one break, and then we'll be right back with more of the debate. We're going to get back into the questions now in this final segment of what's been a spirited debate back and forth here. We've got about a half hour left, and we're going to go to a question from our Rick Oliveira, and Mayor Pereira will answer first.
Mayor, we have another social issue that's kind of unfolded in the past few months, and it's the rail trail bike path controversy. What is the best solution for the city of Fall River with this conflict and easement issue?
So just in the paper today, I think there was an editorial from the editorial board that stated that it's now the onus is on me to fulfill my promise to those people when I said unequivocally that rail trail will not be crossed by a road. So we are working on other entrances and exit points that do not cross the road. There's a couple properties around the property that needed access that we're working on, and I think that's what we'll do. We'll solve that problem, but that's what a leader does. They bring the other groups to the table and say, hey, can we make this happen? How do we make it happen? Let's do it. Now, the councillor is going to say that I duped them, that I snuck this in, but this is what I find so bizarre about this particular statement that the councillor has made several times. It was unanimously approved by the city council. They then later, 3 months later, say that we duped them or tricked them. No, we didn't trick them. There was a normal course of business. It went down. It started in 2013. It continued with Mayor Sutter, and it continued with me by sending this down. I had thought this had already been negotiated. This council spends 2 hours talking about a $30,000 transfer in my office from salaries to marketing for the city, but spent no time approving this unanimously. That's just, it's very bizarre to me. But there will not be a road that crosses this rail trail. I've said that unequivocally, and I stake my reputation and my, like the paper said today, it's the onus is on me to make sure that doesn't happen if I'm reelected.
Councillor?
When the state transferred the land to us, it was also provided as being a linear park. So before this even came to the council, the park board should have met on it. The park board should have had a public hearing on it. So yes, the information came down, and usually easements, utility easements, are passed. This didn't come down like anything else. It didn't come down with maps or any such thing. It didn't. So to say that it came down like everything else and we could have debated it, that's not the information the council had. I don't know. What's the cost of an easement? Your campaign contributor gives you money and you're going to put in an easement? Is that what the cost of an easement is today? It was wrong. It was absolutely wrong. And when the state gave it to us, it said you couldn't use it for anything else. Go back and read the agreement from 2013 that Mayor Flanagan signed. And when Mayor Sutter, when this came to him, Mayor Sutter said no. So get the easements and look them over. That's simply not factual. And no one from the Bike Trail Committee, no one even got information on it. If it was a good thing, you would have talked to people about it. We're implementing this. This is what we're doing. You would have had a press conference on it. So to say that we weren't duped, we were, and you know it.
Mayor, your response?
My response is that I don't think it's a good thing, which is why it's okay to reverse your position. People came to the table, they organized, they had a public hearing, which I was not invited to but did attend, because I thought it was that important that my presence was there to tell those people that were passionate about this bike path that the path would not be crossed, and I would make sure that although maybe there was an oversight on both the council and mayor's side, we didn't know that there would be this kind of, outcry from the bikers, whomever it may be. We wanted to make sure that their problem was fixed, and that is what I'm committed to doing.
No, because then the next day you said you were working on a compromise. You go down and you tell people you don't want a road, there will be no road. And then the next day that there's going to be a compromise. That's not what you told them. And a good leader would have vetted this out prior to even sending an easement down.
One last exchange on this.
So the compromise is exactly what I said. We are looking at alternative routes so that we satisfy all parties. I have continued to do this, whether it was Atlantis Charter with the Dickinson Street individuals that live there, whether it's been so many other things that we've looked to solve everyone's issue as best we can. That's what we're trying to do now. We want to bring the bike people to the table, want to bring the developers to the table, and I think there are other paths that don't cross the bike path that can give access to that facility, and that's what we're doing. That is what a leader does. You know, there's no question. You have to take ownership. You did vote for the easement, and it said in the easement, over a way.
5 seconds. Okay.
Right. But it didn't say roadway.
It said over
It
a
said
way.
over a way. It didn't talk about trucks. It didn't talk about cars. It didn't talk about that. So, you know, let's be honest. This issue is going to end up being a legal battle for the city. One person or another, one side or another is going to end up suing, and that's reckless decisions. And a leader doesn't act reactively to something. A leader acts proactively to something, and you failed to act proactively on this issue.
My opponent continues to say that she uses the word fail. We have not failed. We've had tons of successes because of our great team. And in this particular case, we are avoiding legal action because of relationships. We are talking with the developers and making sure that they feel comfortable with alternative access points. We are making sure that I fulfill the commitment that the road will not pass over the bike path. That is what a leader does, and I really take issue with you saying that we have failed because we've had tons of successes. The road is not built. How can it be a failure if the road has not been built? We are making sure the road does not get built. You continue to want to dupe the public and trick them.
All right, we're
I
going to have
don't
the last
dupe
word on this.
anybody. You just use glittering gibberish. The fact of the matter is you don't know how to communicate with people before things are resolved.
I think maybe we'll move on to the next question, and that's going to be coming from Alan in the newsroom, and Councillor Pereira will answer first.
Curious, there are, in fact, 2 questions on the ballot on November 7 next week. One, of course, the question regarding the charter revisions. The second is a $123 million package of improvements to the city's water system, a variety of projects that involve the removal of nitrogen from the water and also some of the CSO work, which has to be paid for. What happens if that is rejected? What is the plan B in case that fails? And what would you as mayor do about it? What could the mayor do about it?
Start with
Well-
Councillor Pereira.
Well, Alan, if the question doesn't pass and we are under court mandate, I would assume that the Conservation Law Foundation would come to the city and we would be in court saying, Your Honor, we understand that we have to comply with this. However, the electorate of our community voted it down, and perhaps come up with a plan where we can extend it a little further. This has been going on for 20 years, 30 years to get this done? And it was all because of work that wasn't done, money that wasn't given, that they brought us back into court, and now, we're under the mandate. I would also reach out to our federal delegation and our state delegation, because they have to come to the table with some money. I would bring a contingent. Federal is saying it's state, state is saying it's federal. So we're kind of in a quagmire.
Mayor?
So I actually vetoed the $123 million request. I did not think that we had enough information at this particular point in time with a new president of a different party, the Republican Party, who is committed to EPA regulations being relaxed. Not that I'm saying that all EPA regulations should be relaxed, but in this particular case, there may be an opportunity to get some federal dollars. But what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to talk to our federal delegation, which are all Democrats, and figure out a compromise and a way to get some of that infrastructure bond money from eventually, over the next 3.5 years, a package that will be developed by this particular president. That is a very important piece to making sure that we can continue to fund these kind of programs and not have to go to the taxpayers. So that's what we're trying to do. If this fails, that's what we will do. But at the end of the day, I think there are many, many ways that we can avoid what really is, and I actually am part of a consortium of mayors locally that have to meet these mandates, and we are fighting against it. We don't believe that the nitrogen levels in the bay are because of Fall River. We don't believe that those nitrogen levels are correct and accurate. They're actually old data from old power plants being around. So we think we've done our share, and we're going to fight to make sure taxpayers in Fall River don't have to continue spending this absurd amount of hundreds of millions of dollars in tax dollars that should be going to police and fire and schools and education. That's what we're going to do.
Councillor Pereira?
We don't have any other choice. The only choice we have, if this doesn't pass, is to go to court and fight it.
No, again, I think that important here is that you can go to the federal delegation and advocate with a new EPA director who has promised relaxed regulations to maybe move the CSO and nitrogen level conversation to the top of their agenda. We've got 3.5 years more of this particular president, unless something happens in the meantime, of course, but, we can advocate for those issues. So that's what we're going to do, and that's not glittery gibberish. That's a fact.
All right. Well, we're going to move on
That's
to the
fact. That's what we have to do. But we have to resolve it. I mean, it's been going on for years.
All right, we'll move on to our next question, and it's coming from Rick.
On Monday night, the youth forum was held in the city of Fall River, and you heard a lot of concerns from the kids about what it's like to grow up in Fall River. I know both of you grew up here, but today's modern era causes problems and issues and challenges that are unique to the times, from social media bullying to not having access to a lot of the programs that they want to see. What did you promise those kids you were going to do for them?
Start with the mayor.
Is it me?
So, at the youth forum, which was just an outstanding forum, I grew up really with a lot of these different programs, whether it was CD Recreation at the time with the sailing program and tennis program and basketball programs, or whether it was other programs like Teens Against Drug Abuse that I participated in that brought forward a resolution to the city council and an ordinance to the city council, which the councillor at the time was the president of the council and voted against, to eliminate smoking during Little League games. It's something that I'll never forget. I think I was 17 years old, and it was a big difference between the councillor and I at that time. But my particular commitment was really to focus on the three areas that all of the youth on that night really focused on: jobs, sports, and clubs. Those things gave them an opportunity. Those three areas gave them an opportunity to really explore and become adults in our community, safe places. So I want to commit, and I want to continue to commit, opportunities to create scholarship programs to pay for those after-school activity fees. No student in our community should not be able to participate because they can't afford the after-school fees. That's a problem. I'm going to work very hard to curb that, at least by creating a scholarship program. And then transportation was another big one. Transportation issues. Students and anybody in our community cannot get to Providence, Rhode Island, or many places in Rhode Island, via public transportation. So we've worked very closely with CERTA and RIPTA and the Casino Project and Amazon to create a bus route that actually crosses our border, our state border, and bring people back and forth. That's increased transportation options for our youth.
Councillor?
What I pledge to the youth is that after elected, the ring road at Kennedy Park, that there should be activities there. We have our trolleys. They should be picking up and transporting at night when there's no buses available. Also, when I had gone up to the base in Newport, they had vehicles there that the city could have had for nothing. And that would have been a great tool to be able to transport children. You need to have activities. We had activities through our CYOs. And unfortunately, CYOs aren't as active as they were. And that was where you went when you couldn't afford to go anywhere because it was free. But there needs to be activities. And I felt bad for some of the children that spoke and the challenges that they face with bullying, et cetera. And I really think that, Facebook has a lot of bullying as well. Adult bullying. If we want to be role models to our children, we shouldn't be doing that bullying. And I think there needs to be more programs in the schools to assist. And you have wonderful teachers who would volunteer after hours to be involved in a lot of the programs. It's a matter of coordinating those efforts together.
Okay, Mayor? Moving on. If I could, I'm just going to interject a quick one here. Mm-hmm. Maybe it won't require the full 90 seconds here, but I would ask each candidate, starting with Councillor Pereira, What do you respect about your opponent?
What do I respect?
What do you respect about your opponent?
I respect the fact that he is educated and went to school, graduated, and went on to college. I respect that. I respect somebody who's well educated.
Okay. How about you, Mayor?
Councillor Pereira has a very large family, extended and immediate. And, one thing that I've absolutely seen, and there's no question about it, is she is somebody that brings her family together. Even in her advertisements throughout the city, you can see her family on her signs. And she is a family woman, and she's been somebody that has, I think, always promoted her family and loves them and protects them as much as she can. And I know the hardship that politics can bring. She's experienced that much longer than my family has. My family experiences it privately, and it's something that is a definite element in politics that is difficult to deal with. So I respect the fact that she is a family person and wants to protect her loved ones.
All right. And we'll move on to a question from Alan, and we're going to have Mayor Correa answer that one first.
Curious, I believe the current level of spending on public schools in Fall River is at 101% of net school spending. When Meg Mayo Brown was superintendent, I believe one night a couple of years ago, she mentioned a potential goal of 110% of net school spending for Fall River Public Schools. What sort of number is really sustainable in Fall River beyond that current 101%?
So, I take pride in the fact that through fiscal stability that the city has been able to deliver over the last 2 years of my administration, we were able to end the fight between the city council, the mayor's office, and the school department. I sat in 2 different mayors with 2 different budgets from then Superintendent Meg Mayo Brown and in those fiscal years, and we were struggling just to meet net school spending, never mind exceed it. I have pushed the conversation past not only meeting it, but now how do we continue to exceed it? So I'm happy that the question doesn't even reference the fact that how do we meet net school spending, but rather how do we continue to exceed net school spending. So I think over the next several years, I think it's feasible to achieve 103% of net school spending over the next several years and continue that incremental increase so that teachers are well trained, that they have a job, that they don't have to look for another job, and that is a very important piece to reducing classroom sizes. Another goal. The city has set for many years, how do we reduce our classroom sizes? This past year, we went from 32 kids to 27 kids in most of our elementary classes, if not all of them, and some of them are even lower than that. So we're going to continue to invest in schools and education. We're not going to do that at the detriment of public safety. We're not going to pin the two against each other. We're going to fund public safety and our school department. I find it interesting. I've been to, I think, 4 debates now. I have yet to hear one question about the fiscal health of the city, when just 2 years ago we had a mayor saying the city was on the brink of receivership and we couldn't fund our schools, we couldn't fund our police and fire, we had to create new fees. I have moved the entire agenda past fiscal stability with my great team at City Hall and throughout all the departments. We have $8 million in surplus. We've been able to eliminate fees. We've been able to fund our schools. We've been able to get, police and firemen back on the streets, and I'm very proud of that, and everyone should be too.
All right, we're going to go to Councillor Pereira.
I would like to see us giving more and more to our school department. I think it depends on when you write up a memorandum of understanding on the direct costs and the indirect costs. I think the direct costs actually go right to the school and help with the classroom sizes, help with additional services, help with putting paraprofessionals. I would love to see more paraprofessionals within the school department because they assist the teachers so much. I mean, having been a teacher, I know what it's like. I've worked in the schools, and I know when you see teachers that are very committed and they're bringing in supplies to their classrooms, I applaud them for that, but they shouldn't have to do that. So putting more and more money into education, that's our future. If we can educate our children, then they will be successful and you'll see them succeed. Some of the money that we gave them this year was basically because now they're paying for health insurance. Maybe that should have stayed on the city side, or police personnel. And I think that there's more that can be done even in the schools as far as education and assisting children. That's the key to our economic development as well, as an educated workforce.
Mayor?
And a trained workforce. So I do agree that you need an educated and trained workforce. This is why we've invested in workforce training programs as well in all of our high schools, but also in the community. But here, another very important point is the new transportation contract for schools, for school transportation. That contract swelled to almost $9 million prior to my administration. We are taking a hard look at how transportation costs can be reeled in. And there are other communities that are our size that pay not even 75% of what we pay. If we can save that 25% of $9 million, we can reinvest that into our schools.
All right, that's time. All right, we have
Last question.
this is our last question, and we want to again thank the Bristol County Chamber of Commerce for the second hour, and we're going to go to Rick Oliveira with the final question. Mayor Pereira will answer first.
You both have had a fractured at times relationship with other politicians in the city. Amongst the city council, there are several councilors. Some will be gone, some will still be there in theory. How do we move forward and get cooperation back in the city of Fall River? And that's really for both of you.
Yeah, so, the nature of politics is debate and compromise, and that is what I strive to do. Sometimes it's an unconventional way, sometimes it's more conventional. However, I continue to believe that there have been private agendas from my opponent and others on the current city council that have worked actively because they felt that in 2 years, if this administration had not been successful, that I would be unelected and not reelected to the position of mayor. So I think that's been a very, very, very big problem. I have tried to make relationships happen and move in a positive direction. And anybody that claims that I can't build relationships is false. If you look at the school committee meetings, which I lead as the chairman of the school department, and you look at the city council meetings, there's clearly a leadership difference. Councillor Pereira and Councillor Kadim are leaders of the city council, and look at the decorum there, and look at the decorum of the school committee meetings. We're effective, we're efficient, we get things done, and I have a great relationship with all of our school committee members. Look at the grants that we've brought to the city of Fall River over the last 2 years. Back-to-back MassWorks grants to upgrade William Canning Boulevard, our city pier, so many others, because I was appointed by our governor, who I have a good relationship with, and Lieutenant Governor, to the Economic Seaport Council. Look at the relationship I have with our state delegation. We're working on EUPS grants and South Coast Rail and all these others. I have great relationships. The business community, many people in the business community that continue to support this administration. I think after the election, it's a new page. We all start new. We all have the same goal, to move the city forward, and I'm willing to do that, and I will make sure that I ensure the public trust and make sure that people want to work together.
Councillor?
When I'm elected mayor, certainly I would meet with every single councillor, school committee person. You need to build relationships and meet with people. When you have councillors who don't want to meet with the mayor because they're afraid don't want to meet with the mayor alone because they're afraid of him saying something that you didn't say, there's a big issue of trust. When you have a councillor who's brought in to the police department to be questioned on something that was just unbelievable. Where is the trust when you have a police officer come to your home and want to know if you've recorded a conversation with the mayor? Can't you just talk to the person again? It's trust. There's a big issue with trust. And to say that there was a hidden agenda, there was no hidden agenda. To be honest with you, I would have stayed on the city council, retired in December like I did, and stayed on the city council. It's that every single time we hear of something, there's an issue, there's a problem. And that's why I just can't sit there another 2 years and deal with a mayor that doesn't cooperate with people. It's your way or the highway. That's not fair. I mean, think of the people that have been let go. I mean, you let Brad Kilby go by a note from a constable? Who does that?
Mayor, 30 seconds.
That's the legal requirement. That's the legal requirement on how you do that. Okay, so that's the first thing. And we don't have to bring personalities in. There are people that get assessed whether they can do their job or not do their job. That's the way it goes, whether they're my friends or not my friends. You've criticized me for hiring friends. I've also fired friends. So we are an administration that's been proactive, that wants relationships, and we have relationships even with councilors. But there has been this angst of a different direction. I have not heard one single positive thing from this councilor who's sitting here's mouth about the proactive stuff that we've done. Ask the fire department, ask the police
that's
department,
30 seconds.
ask
Councillor?
the schools.
Final rebuttal?
My final rebuttal is the law may require you to do something, but a person with backbone calls somebody in and talks to them and tells them your services are no longer needed. You don't just send a letter. You have backbone and you're a leader, and you can sit and tell somebody something face to face, eyeball to eyeball.
And so each candidate will have 2 minutes for their final statements, and we will start with Mayor Correa.
Well, I want to thank again WSAR, Fall River Community Media, and TV, and all the listeners for listening today, including my opponent and the moderators of the debate and questioners. So, we've had a great debate. I think you've seen again that we have a plan. My side has a plan that is a continued stable progress. That's what we want. We want stability. We don't want change in the mayor. We want the city to continue to proceed. There's a positive on my side and negative on the other side. We have somebody that talked about today that they were, a social worker, and that gave them the credibility to talk about whether people get drug treatment in our city or not. But we have articles about DSS places Pereira on administrative duty, Pereira under DSS scrutiny, Pereira loses her job at DSS, all in the past of this particular councillor. We have a councillor who says, all these different things that she wants to do now, she had 16 years to do them and didn't. Taxes and fees have been constantly voted upon to increase. I have all the stats and all the different decisions. She opened today's debate saying that she has good judgment. I find that very, very particularly interesting when this court case from Margaret Marshall, the Supreme Judicial Court individual, Superior Court, said at the very least, Pereira exhibited outstandingly poor judgment, and poor judgment is inconsistent with the task often fraught with the difficulties that investigators face every day. That's not my words. That's the Supreme Court's words, where she has incredibly poor judgment. But this election will decide the future of Fall River. And what I'm asking people to do is grade this administration on its record of adding more police, more firefighters, more money to schools, reduction in fees, elimination of fees where possible. And I ask that you vote for Jazel Correa II on November 7th so that we and my team can continue the great progress that we have begun. This election is a very important election, and I hope that you'll consider voting for me so that all these things that we talked about today, you saw the contrast between a plan and no plan. I hope that you'll consider voting for me, Jazel Correa II, on November 7th. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. In my opening remarks, I suggested to you that in Fall River we value honesty, hard work, and compassion and judgment, and we expect it in our leaders. I haven't seen those values exhibited in the mayor, and for him to speak about my judgment, let him know that I received a check and I won my job back, and he did that because I was fighting for somebody. As you've heard, my opponent has denied for months that he is the subject of a federal investigation into his business, only to later admit that not only is he aware he was the subject of an investigation, but had hired lawyers to represent him. You want to talk about judgment? What was the judgment of meeting somebody at midnight? That's just a couple of examples of a less than honest conduct that I've seen from this mayor. Has this man earned your trust when it comes to being honest with people of Fall River? How many lies are too many? For the last 2 years, we have seen a mayor neglect the streets, but build streets over bike paths and open space to benefit powerful friends at the expense of our quality of life for the average citizen. In the last 2 years, we've seen the 6th floor for sale, a price tag ordinary citizens of Fall River cannot afford to pay. I'm not boastful. I'm not slick. I don't do a good job of selling myself. But people know where I stand. Whether they agree with me or they don't agree with me, they know where I stand. I have backbone. Had I not been a good counselor, I would not have been elected time and time again. I hope that we've convinced the Fall River voters that we cannot afford 2 more years of this. And I respectfully request your vote on November the 7th. Thank you all very much for the opportunity to debate here.
All right, and we'd like to thank both candidates for taking part in this today.